did yesterday, I have a new case, was to the legal rep. Okay, we have care, how are we going to address it? And help me, and they've all helped me. Like, we discuss it, we discuss economic loss, what's their client's situation, the specifics of the file, and we've come up with means to support the economic loss. And they write me wonderful, long, detailed letters to support it.
Unfortunately, the majority of adjusters don't share your perspective. Yeah. So
I was just going to make that comment that the misfortune of the current system that we have is dependent on the morals, experience, and quality of the insurance adjuster from case to case to case to case. And the way the insurance industry has worked over the last 15 years, they've probably driven about half of their qualified people out. And they have a whole bunch of young people who don't know anything, literally anything. And so if you're lucky, you'll get someone like Wanda or Kevin or somebody who knows what they're doing on the file, and they'll make some intelligent decisions, and you'll fight a few, but most of the time they'll do what's right. And then you get a whole bunch of files where you got people on the other side who don't have a clue, literally a clue, about how to deal with a case responsibly. And those cases, well, too bad for the victim in that case.
You know, I often find that arguing with people under those circumstances doesn't get you anywhere. And so, you know, what we will do is prepare something that says, okay, here's the words of the SABs, incurred. Here's the definition of incurred from the Oxford Dictionary. Here's the documents to support what our client has done. Then pose the question. Please explain to me why this is not an economic loss that has been incurred that would justify blah, blah, blah. And again, this is from a legal representative. I don't think this is in the place of, I don't think this is for a treatment provider to do, because then you're taking the role of an advocate, could get you in trouble later. But, you know, please explain why. Please understand that we are going to rely upon this letter at an arbitration or any litigation that proceeds. And you kind of put them in a no-win situation, because they've got, if they don't answer, they're screwed. There really is no good answer if there is, in fact, an incurred expense along the lines of what Wanda described, a babysitting expense, unless, of course, ultimately the Court of Appeal decides to take a very narrow approach to the definition, which would surprise all of us, because that just isn't the way that insurance contracts are generally interpreted. They are interpreted liberally and broadly, as all of the courts and the rules of statutory interpretation require.
Being really short, I have one suggestion, and I don't recommend you do this every time you're not getting the response you want from an adjuster. But on cases where you feel it's critical or the person's safety and care is at risk, and actually I had a manager come to me 2 weeks ago to discuss a file an adjuster took to them. Well, okay, before I get into the situation, I would, if necessary, call that individual's manager, because like Jim said, a lot of adjusters are very, very inexperienced, and I would do it in a way not to be adversarial, but to help the client. Because if you go to the manager, you're hopefully getting someone with much more experience and a much better level of understanding. The example, I had a manager come to me 2 weeks ago. It was interesting. And she said, okay, you handle the cat and you do your own thing, whatever you do. That's interesting. But my adjuster has a file, non-cat, he's not likely to be, but the person has fractures, both legs. And there's a need for attendant care. And I go, yep, probably 24 hours until they connect with the house, they're mobile. Well, what do we do with the economic loss? I said, well, has the adjuster called the lawyer? What's the specifics of the case? What details do they have? Well, the lawyer's getting it together to see what they can put, and they'll present it to it. I said, well, why don't you, on this case, if it were my file, what I would do, I would advance, I'd tell the lawyer, what I'm going to do is advance $3,000 to you today. I'm doing it on a without prejudice basis. You allocate this money to your client as needed. And then have them send in the documentation, and at that time, review your position on attendant care, what you can do. And the manager said, Linda, I think that's a great idea. And that's what they did. I said, you don't even have to agree you're paying it under attendant care if you're not comfortable at that time. Just say it's advance of funds. Send a letter confirming it, and at least it met some immediate needs.
And that goes back to being creative again. That's what I'm finding is, you know, you hear that idea, you try it. So when we're faced with that, we just can't stand seeing our client without these funds, and you see the devastation to the family, and like Adam was saying, food. But it is true, we can recognize really quickly that that adjuster has, it's way over their head. And going that next level has been really, really helpful. But again, I don't like to do that unless legal's involved, and you know, we'll put that, you know, this individual's being compromised, as is the family.
Just one last question, Wanda. In the case where it's a stay-at-home mom or person, any thoughts, or have you addressed what happens if the quality of life of the family is just completely deteriorated because of the amount of care, but they're not paying for babysitters or anything else, but it's just destroying them emotionally?
Well, like I said, I gave that example, the case I had, I discussed it with the lawyer, and that's exactly how we substantiated my file. They did bring in a bit extra babysitting. I'm sorry, there's very few women out there, I think, agree with me, that would mind having their house cleaned. You know what? Have someone come in and clean your house, pay them $100 that week. That's an extraordinary loss you have that you didn't have when you were able to clean your own house, because you're paying for this care. Show me the bill you paid this person to clean your house. That's what I did on one case.
100 for 3,000 seems like a fair wage, fair deal.
And you know what? You probably can use this extra assistance anyways. It's helpful. I'd be the first one to do it if someone suggested that to me.
But you're still paying based on the Form 1, you're not just paying 100, like Eric's saying, perfect.
No, I'm paying,
If the Form 1's $3,000,
Yeah.
because it's
but
not.
you haven't got anybody incurring an expense, that $100 gets you 3,000.
Yeah.
But not, no, it's not. And like I said, I can't speak on behalf of the insurance industry. I'm not even here to speak on behalf of my own company, because I handle my own files, make my own decisions, and I guess answer on my own behalf only. But I think if you bring up some creative suggestions, it might help the adjuster make more favorable decisions. A lot of adjusters are scared to make a decision. They're not comfortable because our files are audited constantly. And I'm accountable for, I have to answer to many people. I have to answer to the lawyers, I have to answer to my company, I have to answer to my clients. Like, we answer to a lot of people. That's why I want to retire.
I answer to you, you don't answer to me.
At some point in time, though, an insurer is going to have to back up their position. And I had a file last week where my client phoned me up and said, okay, so Kate, they've asked for all of the log notes, all of our training manuals, all of the policy information, and they've asked for our written definition, working definition, absent a divisional court case to guide us. They've asked us for our working definition on what incurred expense means, or on what occupation means. Like, I'm damn sure that even if I work 80 hours a week, I am occupied as the primary caregiver to my 2 children. So an insurer at some point in time has to plant their feet, and if you ask them, counsel, if you ask them to provide going that next step, Adam, on your, you know, this is what the Oxford Dictionary says. What do you say? What do you say? And please provide me with your training manual on this issue. I would anticipate that those manuals were developed within 6 months prior to September 1st, 2010. People aren't really doing that, and you might not get a response. And Wanda's point of, you know, there are so many adjusters out there who are quite new to the industry, and bringing them some honey to have a conversation with their supervisor and manager, and we do see those CC'd letters to the ombuds person of the company, until FSCO is willing to lead the way to give us some definitional guidance. Individual insurers who are all handling it differently, if you exert your nuisance power, which you have, it's called time, they will have to entrench themselves with a specific definition.
I can say that many of my clients do not have guidelines. They have that booklet that Wanda has as their guideline, and they say, this is our guideline. And the problem that insurers will find, I'm certain of this, and I think my friends on this panel will agree, is that the definition of what an economic loss is in the incurred expense definition, provision of the SABs, is so ridiculously broad that you could drive 17 tractor trailers through it. I have said, and I'll say it again, that a person who has to climb the stairs 12 times a day to look after their infirm loved one is wearing out their socks faster than normal, and that $3 for a pair of socks that they have to buy 6 months earlier is an economic loss, and that is probably enough.
Okay, we're over time, but I see that there's one more person who's got a question, so we'll go ahead and...
I joke that I have the unique perspective as an OT and I'm married to an adjuster, so that's always my joke. So I think all of us are agreeing that there is a lot of people that are using the Form 1 and only taking incurred expense. That the number on the Form 1 in a lot of cases is meaning nothing. And to address Carrie's point, I had just researched recently that there was a misconception about OHIP-funded physio, and I know there's not very many places out there, but the misconception was that you had to have surgery. That's incorrect. There is actually online. You have to be hospitalized for 1 single day for the purpose of your injury to be able to qualify for a funded physio, and I have been successful on at least 3 occasions, one with an arm reattachment. I got somebody physio for 2 years, 4 days a week under OHIP. So, and it was excellent physio. So, the creative solutions are out there, and so I thank Carrie for addressing that, and thanks everybody for the comment.
Oh, thank you all for coming. I'd like to thank all of our presenters. They were fantastic.